One of the keys to effectiveness in the world of work is your ability to communicate effectively and well. You spend as much as 75% of your time communicating and interacting with other people. There are two forms of communication. The first form is the way you talk to yourself and dialogue with yourself and think and plan to yourself. And the other form of communication is the way you interact with others. And wonderfully, in us, how to communicate is a learned skill, and you can get better and better at it by learning what the best communicators do and practicing it until it becomes a regular part of your repertoire. Number one, there are three elements to any conversation. Words only account for 7% of the message. When you talk, people will forget most of what you say, but they will remember the way you said it. B, the tone of voice. The mere tone of your voice accounts for fully 38% of your message. When you want to sound friendly, warm, reassuring, intimate, or caring when you speak, keep your voice in the lower range where the deeper sounds are. Also, remind yourself to slow down. It's very difficult to be close, friendly, warm, or thoughtful when you're speaking too quickly. Tone of voice is important, and that's why we need to give some thought to it, because if we're in a hurry or busy or rushed, sometimes our tone of voice can be clipped or short, and it can be hurtful. Fussy body language accounts for fully 55% of your communication. The very best message is a message that is synchronized. The words, the tone of voice, and the body are all synchronized to the message. Very important. That's why when somebody talks to you, it's important you turn toward them and face them directly when you talk to them and listen closely to what they say and nod and pay attention. There's a great book called His Needs, Her Needs, and They Talk. Her first need is for attention, affection, and respect, face to face, eye to eye, heart to heart. And if she gets those needs fulfilled, then everything else will be fine. If she does not get those needs fulfilled, she's going to be unhappy. The only time you're actually with the woman in your world is when you are face to face and giving them attention and listening to them when they talk and giving them affection and respect. Number two, there are three parts of any conversation. The first part of the conversation, ethos, has to do with the character of the person. A person who has high character can say little and be enormously influential. A person with limited character just doesn't have the same effect. B, pathos, is the second part of communication. It means connecting with the emotions, and we connect with the emotions when we connect with the emotions, when we tune in and focus on the person and their problems and their needs. There was a wonderful line I read that said, if every person who complains about their problems could come from all corners of the earth and pile their problems in a heap, and if each person could see the size and gravity of the problems of others, they would sneak forward shamefacedly and take their petty problems away and creep into the night. The factual content of the conversation in selling. What do we say in selling? You establish rapport, which is the character. You seek the underlying problem or need, which is connecting with the pathos, and only then do you talk about your product or service, which is the logos. Number three, there are four basic personality styles. The first is what we call relators. They are quiet, self-contained, not particularly expressive. They're sensitive people, oriented, and concerned about other people's opinions. In the extreme, a relator will be hypersensitive to the opinions of others. They can't do anything without making sure that everybody else approves. If you're communicating with this person, it requires slow, low key, easygoing, friendly, almost warm and fuzzy. The greatest concern in life is let's get along. Let's all be friends. So you find relators in fields like nursing, social services, teaching, small child development, psychology, personnel, or counselors where they relate to other people. Now, the next type of person is the analyzer. This is the kind of person who's not so concerned about people, but more concerned about doing the job and are more inward directed. Their primary concern is, let's be accurate. The analyzer who's fastidious and detail-oriented wants accuracy and just the facts. They'll gravitate toward accounting, computers, engineering, bookkeeping, and computer programming, any field where the problems don't talk back. Now, the third type of person is what we call the director. They're most concerned with, let's get results, get to the bottom line, cut to the chase. Who do you think is reading Success Magazine, Business Week, Forbes, and Success Books and Success audio programs? It's the director, the go-getter, the one who kicks, you know what, and then takes names. The fourth type of personality is expressive. The socializer is outgoing, direct, valuable, and very people-oriented. Many times they become managers or executives because they have highly integrated personalities. They have both a strong focus on people and a very strong focus on achievement and getting things done.
Now, everybody you meet is in one of these 4 quadrants or groups. No matter which style of communicator you are, 3/4 of the people you meet are something else.
There's no right or wrong, better or worse style. Listening to people is to find out which style they are and then to practice personality flexibility so that you can get along with a greater number of different types of people. Whatever style you are, the person you are the most ideal for would be the exact opposite. Nature demands balance in temperament. Nature demands that the opposite person in the relationship or the marriage be temperamentally balanced with you. Number 4 is a balanced dialogue. In the ideal conversation, each person will get a chance to talk and each person will get a chance to listen. And there will be about a 10% to 15% period of easy silences. Easy silence. Just comfortable. People are comfortable with silence. Each of us has needs like vitamin and mineral needs to talk, and each of us has needs to listen. However, some people will have 70% of the time they need to talk, and the other person 70% of the time they need to talk, and so they're always clashing because they're both trying to get their talking out. The worst of all is when incompatibility sets in a relationship and both of them only need to talk 10 or 15% of the time, and then there's vast gaps of uncomfortable silence. This is where the two people really don't have very much in common anymore. Number 5, the key to communication is to question for clarification. If you have any doubt at all, ask, "How do you mean?" or "How do you mean exactly?" and then just pause and wait. It's almost impossible not to answer this question. When you ask, "How do you mean?" the other person cannot stop himself or herself from answering more extensively. Follow up with other open-ended questions and keep the conversation rolling along. The way that you overcome your shyness is very simple. Tune into the other person, ask questions, and then listen carefully to the answers. Focus on encouraging the other person to talk about them. In fact, I'll give you a secret for success in life. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Number 6 is acknowledge and agree. Good conversationalists are active conversationalists. They're not sitting there passively like fence posts. They're actually engaged. Active listening is very, very important. Put down the magazine or newspaper, turn off the television set, lean in, be there the whole time. Number 7, listen attentively. When you listen, his or her feeling of personal value increases. You can actually make another person feel terrific about himself or herself by listening in a warm, genuine, caring way to everything he or she has to say. The more each listens to the other, the more positive and happy each of them feels, and the stronger becomes the bonds of affection between them. Now, the opposite of listening is ignoring. The fastest way to turn a person off, to hurt their feelings, and to make them feel slighted and angry is to simply ignore what they're saying or interrupt them in the middle of a thought. Men are 95% more likely to interrupt a woman than a woman is to interrupt a man. The more you listen to another person, the more he or she trusts you and believes in you. Number 8 is for you to paraphrase the speaker's words in your own words. By paraphrasing the speaker's words, you demonstrate in no uncertain terms that you are genuinely paying attention and making every effort to understand his or her thoughts or feelings. This is where you really prove that you are really listening. So paraphrase it in your own words. Take the time to paraphrase and rethink about paraphrasing while you're listening, and you'll always be a better listener. Number 9 is pause before replying. When you pause, you accomplish 3 goals simultaneously. First, you avoid running the risk of interrupting if the other person is just catching his or her breath before continuing. The second benefit is that you show the other person that you are giving careful consideration to his or her words by not jumping in with your own comments at the earliest opportunity. The third benefit of pausing in conversation is that you will actually hear the other person better. By pausing, you mark yourself as a brilliant conversationalist. All successful people are excellent communicators. So how do you communicate more effectively with others? Now, the first one is a profound communication principle. Be impeccable with your word. What that means is to speak with integrity, which means to say what you mean and mean what you say. Words have the power to create or destroy, so it's a good idea to choose your words carefully and consider their impact before you put them out there in the world. Before you speak or write, I want you to ask yourself these 4 questions. Is it necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? And is it helpful? You know, when you say frivolous, untrue, mean or unhelpful things, it doesn't create a sense of trust or connection in the other person you're communicating with. A lot of people are very careless with their language. The words you use either lift up your energy, make you more creative, or deny your talents. The words you use could reduce your energy. Look at the great business builders, humanitarians, and many of the great artists. They were so careful with their words, and their words lifted people up. They used the language of leadership. The words you use really are like a context or a framework or a stained glass window on the way you see the world. You see the world through a lens, and your language forms that lens of belief. The way you build yourself, architecture, and the way you see yourself in the world is in part through your words. If deep down inside you're coming from scarcity and think, you know what? I'll never have more than the salary that I'm making. Well, then you're not going to go start the big business or read books on financial mastery, because deep inside you would say, what would be the point? I'm not one of those people. If you want to rewire your identity, then you absolutely must dial into this first point of what legendary leaders do in terms of the way they speak, which is to get your precision of languaging right. How did the great military generals get their armies to go out there on fire? It was through their words. Your words to yourself are world class, and also the words you use to your team, to your customers, to your loved ones. So incredibly important. And this leads me to the next communication skill that's probably the most critical skill for everyone on the planet to master, and that is the skill of effective listening. Now, the undeniable truth is we pretend we're listening, but we're really just thinking about what we're going to say next. We're so worried about getting our point across, we pay very little attention to what the other person is trying to say. If you aren't really listening and responding to what the other person is actually saying, ultimately, all you're really doing is having a conversation with yourself. Here's an invaluable tip. Whenever you're having an important conversation, let them go first. Let them empty themselves out first. Be curious how it is that they've come to feel this way, have this point of view. What is it that they are needing you to hear? Now, this takes a commitment to really want to know what the other person is experiencing and needing. Having worked with couples, corporate teams, and diverse community groups, it takes time for people to really feel they've been heard. But if you invest the time and the intention to do that, they will then be ready to hear you and what you're experiencing, what you're needing, and what you're wanting. Sometimes when you've done your best to listen closely to someone, you may not have heard exactly what it was they were trying to say. And that's why it's so important for you to double check and make sure you really understood them correctly. The easiest way to do that is before you speak, to say, so what I'm hearing you say is, and then repeat back to them what you think they were saying, what they meant to say, and then give them the opportunity to clarify any misunderstandings that you might have before you respond to them. Number 3, speak your truth. The conversation you are most resistant is the conversation you most need to have. All too often we get hurt by someone, or we get upset by someone, and we are almost taught by society not to speak up. And a lot of us, we think, well, we could lose the relationship and end up alone. It's almost like non-communication born of fear. But the most effective human beings on the planet all have one thing in common. They speak up and they share their truth. The more you actually practice speaking up when you know you want to speak up, the more you will actually step into your next level of power. The hard talks when you actually speak up or when you grow in power. And you actually not only grow in power, you build intimacy in the relationship when you actually speak up with someone and you tell them how you're feeling and you tell them what's most important to you, whether it's professional or personal. That is really a gateway into the other person having the permission to open up as well. And then you have two mature people talking about what's really most important versus sidestepping the truth. You can say whatever you want, so long as you say it with respect. If your friend is late for dinner and it's important to you that they're on time, well, if you lash out at them and say, "Why were you late?" "I'm angry," that's going to put them into attack mode, which is going to cause them to be defensive. But if you say to them, Johnny or Ravi, whatever their name is, if you say, "You know what? Thank you so much for joining me for dinner. Before we get started and enjoy this incredible meal, if I may, I'd just like to share something with deep respect. Punctuality is so important to me, and I've been waiting here for half an hour. Your time is valuable, and my time is valuable. And I'd be ever so grateful if, when we get together, you would respect my time just like I want to respect your time. Just like I want to respect your time." You've said it with respect. And if it is a healthy person versus a toxic person, they're going to appreciate you being so truthful, and you're also going to teach them that punctuality matters. The second tactic is, you can say whatever, so long as you say it with love and respect. Number 4, if you want to make yourself articulate, then not only should you read, but you should write down what you think. Thinking makes you win the battles you undertake, and those could be battles for good things. If you can think and speak and write, you are absolutely deadly. Nothing can get in your way. So that's why you learn to write. And I know lots of people who've been staggeringly successful and watched them throughout my life. Those people, you don't want to have an argument with them. You better have your points organized, because otherwise you are going to look like and be an absolute idiot. If you're going to speak effectively, you have to know way more than you're talking about. To do that, you have to do a lot of reading. The talk isn't a packaged thing that you present to a group. There isn't a group. There's a bunch of individuals, and you talk to them. So when I talk to a group, I always talk to people one at a time. And that makes it easier too, because you know how to talk to a person. Just look at an individual and you say something and you can tell if they're engaged. They look confused, or they look interested, or they look interested, or they look angry, or they look bored, and they give you feedback about how you're doing. You're actually engaged in a conversation with an audience, even if they're not talking. They're nodding and shifting position and, looking like this, looking like this, and you can pull all that in and use it to govern the level at which you're addressing the entire audience. The last thing I would say is, having the aim to be a good communicator is a good start. There isn't anything that you can possibly do that makes you more competent in everything you do than to learn how to communicate. The people that I've watched in my life have been spectacularly successful. Do they have skills? Clearly. That's it, minimum precondition. Whenever they negotiate, they're successful. It doesn't mean you win, because if you're a good negotiator, if you're a really good negotiator, everybody walks away from the negotiation thrilled. And so then people line up to do things with you.